Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to the Four Mothers of Women's Spirituality Online Resource Center. I am your hostess, Vajra. I'm the curator of the project. And today we have with us Susanna Budapest. Good morning, Z.
Good morning, Vajra.
Oh, I am so delighted to have you here. I want to read first a little introduction to give context to our interview for the people out there, and then I'm going to read from your bio, and then we'll start hearing your wisdom.
Okay.
I am, women's spirituality emerged as a major component of what's known as the second wave of women's lib, and that emergence took place in the 1970s and 80s, and Z was there at the very, very beginning. But many people today don't know about these foremothers of the women's spirituality who are courageous, radical women. And by radical, I mean they went to the root in developing authentic spiritual experiences and practices that go beyond the boundaries of patriarchal religions. These women followed their passion, their convictions, an innate inner knowing that they tapped into. And they also built upon a growing body of scholarly knowledge to connect with the original spirituality, the nature and female honoring spirituality that preceded these past 6,000 to 10,000 years of patriarchal father gods.
Mm-hmm.
And they, along with many other feminists, pioneered a diverse spiritual orientation that is based in respect, in reverence, and relationship for all. And the foremothers are not only historically significant, but many of them today are continuing and evolving their vital work, as is Susanna Budapest. And that's why this resource center has been created, to provide the historical overview via personal testimonies and the recollections of the foremothers of the formative first 2 decades of the women's spirituality movement, and then to learn about their ongoing work today. So we're meeting these women in the form of taped interviews with additional interviews and resources to be expanded as time goes on. And this interview with Z Budapest is taking place in May 2018. And to begin, I would like to read the biography that is in the back of one of her books, The Grandmother of Time. She's written many books, and this is in the back of The Grandmother of Time. Susanna Budapest was born, how do you say your middle name, Z? Emis?
Emese, it means storyteller. My middle name is called a storyteller. Emese.
Oh,
Mese
beautiful.
is story in Hungarian. Emese is somebody who tells the story.
Wonderful. Susanna
Emese
Budapest.
I didn't always know this. I had to look it up, and there it was. I said, oh, my God, had I known, I would have known faster. Anyway.
Well, you were well named. You were absolutely well named.
And there's a whole business, there's a whole story about how that name was meant to be my normal name, and they wouldn't allow it because Emese is not in the Bible, and the priest refused to christen me. And I was already 3 months old, which is old for a baby for that kind of ritual.
Uh-huh.
And then they had to halt. They didn't want to go back home. Everybody was all dressed up. And plus, we didn't want to bump into my father, who forbid that I be christened. One reason that my father was an atheist, and my mother, of course, a witch. And then I think I think it was my mom who said, but there are lots of Zsuzsanas in the family. Zsuzsana is a very often used name in Hungary, and it's Vajra. It's the same Zsuzsana. My name is sort of like
Zsuzsana. Beautiful.
Like your name. Yeah.
Well,
and
you have
they put that in because, Susanna and the old lectures, remember the 3 old men who see Zsuzsana bathing, and then they come and they want to fuck her, and she says, no way. And then they said, well, we say, you did say yes if you don't, and which is a horrible way to treat a woman, because back then they killed you for adultery. They just killed you right out. And then the issue went in front of Solomon, who was a very righteous king, And he asked each of the others, okay, so where did this whole thing take place now? Where did this and they each mentioned a different location, and then he knew they were lying. And they were punished, and of course, Zsuzsanna was not. But
well, see, you're living right up to your
name.
storytelling name. All right, at the beginning, I'm going to go ahead and read your bio so that people get a fuller background of who you are. But you were so well named, and this is what I love about you. You can spontaneously teach from so many avenues of your knowledge. So I'm going to start again. Zsuzsanna MSc Budapest, I'm doing my best there, was born in Budapest, Hungary, during a big winter storm on January 30th, 1940. Her mother, Masika, was a medium and a practicing witch. So Z is a hereditary witch. Her mother supported herself and her daughter with her art as a sculptress. And Masika's themes always celebrated the triple goddess and the fates, and so Z grew up respecting and appreciating Mother Nature as a god. The poverty of post-war Europe and political oppression under the Russian occupation made Z fiercely political. So, when the Hungarian Revolution broke out in 1956, she took her destiny into her own hands and became one of those 65,000 political refugees who left the country. They're mostly young workers and students like herself. She finished high school in Innsbruck, graduated from a bilingual gymnasium, and won a scholarship to the University of Vienna, where she studied languages. Z then immigrated to the United States in 1959 and became a student at the University of Chicago, married, and gave birth to 2 sons. In Chicago, she studied with the Second City, an improvisational theatrical school, the only one in the country at the time. Her family's spiritual tradition, however, started seeping back into her life, and she practiced solo worship of the goddess at her home altar in her backyard. When she entered her Saturn cycle at the age of 30, she became involved with the women's liberation movement in Los Angeles and became an activist herself, staffing the Women's Center there for many years. And it was then she recognized a need for a spiritual dimension so far lacking in the feminist movement, and she started the Women's Spirituality Movement. She founded the Susan B. Anthony Coven No. 1, the first feminist witches coven, which became the role model for thousands of other spiritual groups being born and spreading across the nation. She wrote the Holy Book of Women's Mysteries, published in 1989, but originally published in 1975 as a feminist book of lights and shadows. And that book served as the first hands-on book to lead women into their own spiritual goddess heritage. That book is a must-read for all women. It is rich with history and personal magic that you can do, and putting it in a context of goddess understanding and the European shamanic tradition that preceded Christianity. That's just my little tag I wanted to add at the end of that. And Z, it's hard to know where to begin because there's just so many avenues that we could go down with you. And we've just heard about how you were at the very beginning. You saw the need for women's spirituality. Can you give us a picture of what that is for women who may not know about women's spirituality today, what that entails, and what their true heritage is?
Well, each age brings its own prism to look through at history. And what I brought here with me was a sense of revolution and how that occurs and how it changes culture. When I experienced the Hungarian Revolution, I was only 16 years old, and I just left the class, the French class, because I was taking Latin, and I was all by myself in front of the school where there were these students giving me a leaflet. And a leaflet I have never seen before. I heard about leaflets that was used in freer countries than my own. I took the leaflet in trembling hands. I ran back to the class. I gave it to the French teacher, said, please read this. This is awesome. And she did. She looked at it and she read it aloud. And it was all about invitation to a big gathering on the BEM Plaza, which was walking distance from our school, and that it was allowed. We had permission. So people were not afraid that we get killed if we show up. And this was true for a couple of hours until the authorities saw that over 10,000 people were already there, and it was hours before the gathering would start. And the people who were there realized that, oh no, this is too small. We have to go across the river and do it around the Parliament, which is the only big place built for this to receive a lot of participants. And so we started moving towards that. And when that happened, the authorities withdrew their permission. And they announced it on the radio, so we all knew about it, but it was too late. This could not stop. And there we gathered around the Parliament. And just what one gets from big gatherings is a group spirit. Really, in this case, it was somewhat of a holy feeling to it, because as Hungarians, we are not very peaceful with each other. We often bicker. You know, we're just like normal people who have conflicts, and we don't necessarily love Hungarians all that much. But when we didn't see the Hungarian flag on top of the Hungarian Parliament, instead we saw a red star, which was the Russian symbol, the Soviet symbol. We got all incensed. We suddenly became very Hungarian, every one of us down the line. And we started chanting to put out that star, it uses too much electricity. That was a chant. It sounds much better in Hungarian. You want to hear it in Hungarian? Oltsák el az áram, oltsák el a csillagot, fogyassza az áramot. But it's essentially put out the star, it uses too much electricity. So I found it humorous even back then, but it worked to put out the red star, and then the sense of empowerment that comes over thousands of people who are now united in identity. And that is the key, the identity. Who do you think you are? Where is your tribe? Where do you belong? Where is your heart? That was an amazing experience. And yes, it was when I came to the United States, I was 19, so it was a few years afterwards. But this never left me, never. I feel it right now. I mean, the awesome sense of oneness with your own people, and you have a righteous cause, because it's not right that they don't even fly the Hungarian flag. I mean, we knew they were occupying us, but at least some mannerism should have been preserved. But no, they are left-footed like Trump. They were actually like Trump, the Soviets. They were rude, they were murderous, they had no heart, and they thought Hungarians were not nice people because, for whatever reason they have, we never had battles with them. We never won against them. Historically speaking, it's always the Russians that squished our revolutions. So anyway, I brought that sense to this revolution, and I looked at it very closely because I was a staffer on Crenshaw, the First Women's Center in Los Angeles, and I was the Monday staffer for Moon Day, of course. And I learned everything that I read everything that came through the door, all the brochures and pamphlets that were now published across the country, even from other countries. And I realized how this is really global. And when I came to create and conceptualize women's spirituality, I knew that what I needed was digging up. I needed research. I needed to dig up what we used to have, and that was very hard. I mean, you could walk into any bookstore in 1970 and not find more than one or two books about women. And by women. It was a sad thing as you discover that this country is not interested in women. We are not even in the libraries or anywhere. So I started going to UCLA's library and then developed relationships in other libraries. And I did find Bruffaut, Mother Right, and his whole devotion was about, excuse me, I walked into my living room. I'm going to put this music away, much as I love it, but it is going now. There. No. Go away. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have classical music on because it helps me think. Plus, each time I get lazy, I'm thinking to myself, listen to this music. These were written by hand, but a feather from the tail of a bird that had to be dipped all the time to get some music on paper, and yet they did it. I'm always humbled by musicians of the old. Anyhow.
You were talking about Bruffaut.
Then I came across somebody very important, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who was a religionist, in my opinion, as well as she was an abolitionist. And from the women who worked for the erasure of slavery were the first wave feminists, because out of that, they went into doing the same thing for women, liberating women. And Elizabeth had education because she was raised as a boy. She had 9 children. It's just awesome. Every speech that came out of Susan B. Anthony was written by Elizabeth Cady. And she couldn't travel with them because, kids and household and cows and making butter and baking breads, and to run a big household, she didn't have the time. And also, when her last child has left the house, that's when she started giving speeches herself. And that was a big breakthrough in a time that there was no media. The media was the spoken word. People gave speeches. And this is a tradition in this country, going back, way back. Victoria Woodhull, for example, and her sister Tennessee, they were spiritualists. They entertained themselves by giving speeches and calling in spirits who would knock or do some noise of some sort, and then they all thrilled to it. Oh, the spirit is here. And I thought, that's kind of like circus stuff. It's not really, it's not the real thing. And slowly, there was Matilda Jocelyn Gage, who wrote Women, State, Church and State. And she had it already figured out 100 years ago, how the church and the state combine against women, and how this combination, this oneness, resulted in a lot of cruelty against women, certainly all the cruel laws that were passed. And it was all about treating women as slaves and treating their children as slaves. And they did not have anything for all this service. They were never paid. They could not even hold on to their kids. If a husband got tired of her, all he had to say is, she's crazy, and they locked her up. This was what the first wave had to face. By the time the second wave got into the picture, we already knew how wars came and went, and how each war produces poverty, and poverty produces anger and illnesses that fuel anger, and then an all-out mental anguish, because the spirit in all of us resents being enslaved in body. The spirit comes to do some good, and the body is our vehicle to be on this planet. However, when all that is squelched, they can really erase women. And so we became just a baby-making machine. It took a feminist to make a Mother's Day and a Father's Day, the same feminist, but it was the feminist, I would say it is still maybe the children of the first wave. They continued the work and changed laws and perceptions. Elizabeth, for example, freed the babies from being swaddled so they couldn't move. She believed that babies should move to, break in the new limbs and everything, get some muscles going. That was her, and she also promoted education for girls, and many other good, healthy ideas she had. Women's health was on her top of the list, which Elizabeth Cady lived herself, all those many kids, and when you have a class of kids, somebody gets a cold, everybody gets a cold. Can imagine in a family. I saw her house, not a very big house. They may do on very little quite a lot. So I educated myself like this, and then I came across the part in Matilda Jocelyn Gage when she says, I have written a letter and protested it, the last suffrage meeting they had, that they prayed to God, a guy in the sky. And I protested that. I said, you cannot really have a revolution if you don't depart from the male God and his wrath and the fear of him. You have to give him up. He is a fable. And that was already spread by the Women's Bible that Elizabeth Cady wrote with 10 other women. They actually went back in time and found the origins of the Genesis. And it wasn't written, it was just a picture on a brittle palm leaf. It showed a man lying down, apparently asleep, under a tree, and then next standing a woman, naked woman, just standing, and above her was something that looked like a moon, crescent moon, which they interpreted it as a rib. And that's where the stupid rib thing comes from, because it could be lying to people about it. Oh, that's not it's a rib. It's not the moon. No, not the moon. Not at all. It was the moon. Moon and woman and man unconscious tree. So all of that came down to the Genesis that they still promote today.
I want to say something here, Z. What you're bringing through is that in a very real way, the women in the first wave feminism, the suffragists, Matilda Jocelyn Gage and Katie Stanton, were the foremothers of women's spirituality.
Yes, they were.
In
and
the
they
United
were
States.
militant.
Yeah.
They were militant about it, especially Gage. Gage's book was banned by the Pope, and then her son ran to her with this news. Mom, guess what? Your book had been banned by the Pope. She stood up with a big smile, opened her arm, and said, I was hoping for that.
So many people. Yeah, I love her for that. Yeah, so many people do not know about Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Matilda Jocelyn Gage and how they exposed the patriarchal strictures of a jealous, domineering father god.
Jealous, possessive guy who needs therapy. I mean, what kind of a guy talks to human guys and saying, well, you have to prove your love to me. Why don't you kill your boy for me? Oh, yeah, you won't. And then I believe that you love me. What is that? That's a mentally ill guy who has gay panic. I mean, come now. You hear that? Yeah, it's a gay panic thing, and yet it's alluded to the scriptures. Doesn't mean anything. Scriptures means whatever people wrote down, and you honor. What you honor makes it important, nothing, and not what's in it. Anyhow, I had all that, and then my first year was over at the Women's Center, and winter solstice was coming, and I said, what this movement really, really, really needs is a new spirituality movement that is actually having our own rituals, our own holidays, remembering our own calendars, the lore, the fairy tales, the drawings, the everything. We had a culture here, and I'm going to bring it back. And that's essentially what I devoted my life to bring back the goddess culture with its very own calendar, which is very different from the patriarchal calendar. And I created the first round calendar. You know, I just created one, but then Luna Publication continued doing it with the round days, and everything started getting round. The new tarot cards got round, and that shape. So, and we stopped praying to the male gods in evocation when we met. We just didn't do any evocation for a while until enough witches happened that they were there, and they would just simply say, and let us gather now in the spirit of our mothers and the great goddess, and nobody objected. I did that too at the Women's Center, and first ever eyes opened on me, mostly because women had been hurt by religion so badly and such a long time. I mean, remember, it was religion that hunted down women who had good lands, accused them of being witches, and then given it to the state to execute them. That's how they were hand in hand. So the church did the accusation and the mock trial, and then they got the land from the dead woman, and not her descendants. They deprived the descendants from inheriting. Oh, male cruelty is just beside. I mean, that's just so horrible. And then it's fueled and justified by religion. Oh, you are a good man. You hate women, you know. Women, their bodies are horrible. You cannot look at them. It's sick. It is sick. It's all kinds of psychological problems going on there.
Yeah.
And
sick.
That is still there. It will be. I cannot psychotherapize a nation, but I can help the women who are in this nation to wake up, and they talk to their people, and that's how it is done. And I'm so impressed that actually occurred. I was hoping for that, but you cannot count on anything in revolutions. They may or may not occur, and here it did. There was a great reception for the goddess, and then the women, first of all, you mean I'm a goddess? I mean, what makes me a goddess? Well, I just kept saying, if you are quiet a moment and you allow your inner self to reveal, there is a part of you that is immortal. There's a part of you that knows the past more than your brain knows the past. Plus, today we know that there is a DNA maternal inheritance that's passed only from mother to daughter. And in it is your DNA with everything, how your ancestors started out from Africa, how then they went east, and then 10,000 years later, they went to Europe because Europe had a mini ice age. It wasn't very desirable to go there. And what I learned from my DNA that I had done recently, imagine I have Neanderthal. I have the oldest human genes in me, and they were so diverse. So a lot of people must have. But what they said on my pie, they said that you have more variants than 96% of our clients that we have found Neanderthal genes. And I thought, yeah, because there was another world, and that world was wiped out by a big volcano that actually killed the Neanderthals. It wasn't a battle, it was a volcano in northern Italy that erupted. And the Neanderthals lived there mostly, northern Italy, all the way to Central Europe, where I come from. But not everybody was killed, because the Neanderthals also like to go to the south, and there were Bulgarian Neanderthals, and there were some who survived this volcano eruption because they were down at the Gibraltar Rock fishing. So that was like a big deal. Fishing was a big deal for Neanderthals, and most of the places where they were landlocked, and they fished in rivers and lakes, but they knew where the ocean was. And my people went there. That's one of my variations. They went to Bulgaria, they went down to the Gibraltar, and then shot back up north. And I enjoyed my DNA stories. I wanted to know more about the variations business, but I didn't have the money to throw on it.
Well, we do know, don't we, that the Neanderthals had a spiritual a view of life. They buried their dead with ochre, the red blood of the earth.
Yes, they had symbology going. Symbology is a high form of intelligence. Symbology is intuitive, and they are the ones who did the cave paintings everywhere. That was the early humans who already had a goddess. They worship goddesses.
See, would you tell us about? I love the story of the night. It was 1968, I think, when you were out on the land, and you asked for a sign from the owl as to whether this movement would last. Do you remember that story?
I do. That happened in Hollywood. We had our first Sabbath on December 21st, 1971, when we decided that we're going to be a coven. It's going to be called Susan B. Anthony, because not because she was a spiritualist, but because she was best known. And we wanted people to get it, that this is nothing to do with the devil. This has to do with Susan B. Anthony, who was a suffragist, so it has nothing to do with the devil. That's none of your concern. You don't need to worry about the devil. It's a Christian God, and we don't have it. So, yes, and a little rain started, which is very rare, Southern California rain on winter solstice. And we ran into it. We wanted to feel it. And holding hands on top of Whitley Hill. If you know Hollywood Boulevard has Whitley crossing and ending in it, and if you go up, it's a very steep hill, and on top of it was our house, which served back in the day as where the gardeners and the servants were for the movie stars, who all had big houses up there. So we were really just living in this house for the servants, but we felt very special because we lived among the great buildings of Hollywood. And we went out there, and I also wanted to leave Barbara Chesser alone because she's been rhyming 4 hours, and she was freaking out Dixie, who was a taxi driver. And these were just a diversity of wannabe witches there. And Barbara was getting a PhD in possession and shamanism. She was well steeped in a whole lot of new brews and juices. And I wanted her to have time to get out of it, So I took Dixie with me and the others. And that was an owl in Hollywood, not a place where owls normally hang out. And she was in a palm tree. And I was feeling so special that night that everything in me was percolating. My brain was on fire. I really felt the importance of what we were doing. And I asked the hour to hoot us 7 times, or was it 5 times? I wrote it down, but it was one of the high
I think it was 7. I think I remember 7.
Yeah. And if it's just for us, then I would have taken anything, 5 or 3 or any uneven numbers. And when she was finished with 5, I thought, oh my God, this is global. And then she put 2 more on it, and I went, yes, this is the vision. The vision had been received, and Athena herself told us it's going to be global. And I could really feel the connection to nature, that they are approving of this. This is important for nature, that women start talking to them again and doing things for them and rescuing them and rescuing ourselves with the new consciousness. So, yes, that did occur, and there were many women who were...
Beautiful story, to have the courage to ask for an omen and then wait for it and get it, that, yes, this movement is going to go forward, and then to be told further that it's going to be global, which has come to pass. And Blessed be. I'm so grateful for that I don't have to be dead to enjoy it, I don't have to be dust and looking down from somewhere, some cloud. No, I'm in my body and I'm having it now, and I appreciate it now. And the knowledge exploded. It went totally, it went supersonic. The waves went out and washed over the globe. And totally people who we didn't know started doing things that we ourselves were doing. And brave women came forth. There were priestesses just stepping in the light, and I could see them. And then it happened in the Jewish priestesses, the Native American priestesses, loved the Eskimo priestesses who totally had the lifestyle and everything with the reindeer. It just became a great balm on my wounds from the Hungarian Revolution that we lost, a great balm on my soul that I have used that experience for something that will go on anyway. Beautiful, yes. What would you say to women today who don't know anything about women's spirituality? Let's say some of our listeners know nothing about it. What would you say to these women? What is women's spirituality? What do they need to know about themselves and their true history of spirituality as a woman?
But first of all, if you are in that position, you better know how to read. You have to educate yourself. We don't go door to door telling you the good news. You have to buy a book, and it's widely available. Everybody got a little something with the internet. You can get things. You have to know where you come from. When I teach women, the first assignment is find out your own DNA. Where do you come from? And then go look into that nook of the world and find out what they still have, that they celebrate, because what we celebrate shows our values.
Uh-huh.
People celebrate what they believe in. And women must celebrate ourselves because nobody else is going to. And without celebrating yourself and see it done by sisters, you don't know your tribe. Your tribe are the womb men. I renamed that ourselves. We are womb men. I'm sure that was the original word, and then they just shortened it as normal, woman now. But womb man is our original word, and that's our tribe. That's our tribe. And we are the ones who create humans from our own bodies. And we nourish them from our bodies once they are created, and we can see them grow into grown-ups. Mother's Day should celebrate this awesome labor that we give to our children, our offsprings. And of course, to establish good mothers are educated. Ignorance often slices into cruelty. Ignorance takes you into cruelty much faster than if you are informed. So let's say you found out that you are, let's say, from Russia, or you are from Central Europe or wherever, and you look into the art there and you see the goddess already in folk art, still around. You dig up your own roots. It's a arduous but exciting journey. It is a way of teaching yourself about yourself, so your spirit will be excited about it. So there'll be energy for you to continue doing that. You will not suddenly be bored with this. You will continue doing it. And where it leads you is a global tribe that enfolds every culture, and you have now a tribe that is bigger than just your DNA. And that's what we get unity out of the goddess. The goddess is unity for women. Then we are not hung up on, oh, you wear a chador, or I don't, miniskirt, blah, 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 blah. Makes no never mind. We are women who worship the goddess, who is ourselves, inside and outside. We create humanity. We are goddesses, every one of us.
Yeah, when you say woman, it's there is no distinction between the womb of a white woman, a black woman, a brown woman, a red woman, a yellow woman. There's plenty of distinction in our cultures, and that's beautiful, and our traditions, but they all go back to the womb of woman, don't they?
Yes, they all do. And when the chips are all down, it's after wars. If you kill all the women, you won't have any people. And that happened to Hungary under Suleiman, who was a very successful, unfortunately, too successful leader of the Turks. And the Turks always wanted Hungary. So they did take us, and Suleiman killed Hungarians down to the last one he could find. And so after it was over and he died, Maria Theresia, the empress, the Hungarian Austro-Empire, he had to import people to Hungary to make people be there again, And so we got a nice, large community of Jews that were settled in Transylvania. And we got also Germans, southern Germans from Swabia and Bohemia, and she just reached around, and if you want land and you want to live a little bit south, come be here. And they did come, and then they became Hungarians because the language we have is one of the oldest languages on the planet right now. It is so ancient that every time it's studied, people just get their minds blown. The only other language that is sort of like as old is the Basque, and that's it. I think the Basques also have this ancient language. They are tucked away in the Pyrenees, which is southern Spain, or is it northern Spain? I think it's maybe north. No, it's on the edge of Spain, either north or south. I have to look it up.
You know what? I would like you to tell the story, if you would, about the Tarot reading. And the reason I want you to tell the story about how you read Tarot and were arrested for that and fought that in court is because the oppression of women and women's divination arts, very much a women's art for the most part, divination, was being repressed in our recent history when you were here, and you had to fight it. I would love for people to understand that, how recent this oppression is. Would you tell us that story about the Tarot?
Well, you see, the police does do some homework, and they had this law, this municipal code that went back 50 years at that time, in 1972, 50 years before that, against the roving bands of gypsies who were rolling the 79ers for gold nuggets. And they would say, oh, I have seen it, the gold is over there, that would be that small nugget that you have there, okay? And if it was true, they came back for more ideas, and if it wasn't, well, they were just ripped off, and then they complained, and eventually a municipal code was created against roving bands of gypsies. So they don't take advantage of the 49ers. This was a law lingering there on the books in Los Angeles. I had a little shop for books and incenses and occult supplies called Feminist Wicca on Lincoln Boulevard in Venice. And we had a banner that said this, Feminist Wicca. And that just kind of stuck with the police. The police just puzzled it, and then decided to set me up. So they sent me a woman who made an appointment, showed up, and there was this stench in my otherwise wonderful, heavenly smelling shop. Everybody always mentioned, oh, it smells so good here. And on that morning, it smelled awful, and it smelled like cat shit. And I was going like, I don't have a cat. How can that be? I have a dog, but not a cat. And the policewoman just said, that's all right. I help you clean it up. I said, you don't understand. You don't clean up cat shit. Cat shit smell, you may clean it up, but it moves into every corner of your room, and it won't be for weeks before it's gone. So to get rid of her, really, I said, okay, let's wash it up, and with Van. So now it smells citrusy, and okay, I read your cards, and there it was. Her significator was the devil. Now, the first thing out of my mouth there was, so are you connected with anything that has bondage in it, or locking up, or imprisoning, or... Mm-hmm. She totally got changed by that. You know, the demeanor changed. She suddenly became a normal client. You know, oh yeah, how did you know? You know, and then it was about her mother and her daughter. Daughter wants to study veterinarian. She was gonna go to school in Florida, but she has a job here in LA. So she's sending her mom with the daughter, and would that work out? And, you know, just life. So when it was over, I finally sent her away. She gave me $10, which was my price back then. And a few minutes later, I have two plainclothes policemen come, and they surround me and say, in Budapest, you are under arrest. For what? Fortune telling, 4330. And they took me in the big house, and I had to go pee, and that was impossible because a woman was standing outside in high heels, pacing up and down. Police women, new jobs, they still were supposed to wear high heels. Horrible. I couldn't function. It was terrible. Anyway, my friends got me Marge Buckley, who was a very good lawyer back then, and she was actually running for some political office. So I trusted her that she has ambition and this may help. And she came and got me out of jail. And then at trial, we could settle $100 for penalty, or I said no, because I'm like a first priestess here, visible priestess. I'm not going to sell out. You think I'm guilty? Let's have a trial. And they didn't want a trial, but I figured trial, what can go wrong? Well, lots of things can go wrong with a trial.
I know. Yeah.
First of all, it was all Chinese women who didn't know English. I never seen so many Chinese women. I thought maybe they just nabbed them from some gathering they were at, but Chinese women who didn't speak English, they had to be translated the word witch, and that translates into Chinese as poisoner.
Oh.
So they were already had their opinion. I was the poisoner, and I'm going to go down. And after 4 days of different testimonies and how Z is totally legit, and she's got papers and blah, blah, and articles and books, no, it didn't matter because that was 4330. And that was a municipal code that told the story about no matter what you do, if you use any psychic powers to do anything, it's inherently fraudulent, therefore you are guilty. The pagan community saw this, said, oh, Z, that's okay, because now you are declared a real witch. Said, I've been a real witch. I don't need it to be declared. I know about that. I mean, come on, it's not a secret to me that I'm a real witch. But the pagan community at that time, that was the good part of the pagan community. The other part said, well, you must have asked for it. I mean, I said, first of all, nobody asked for getting into trouble like this. But if you think they had anything that I didn't shore up before this happened, I had permission. I had a license as a tarot reader. I paid taxes, and this was a legit thing. I did not rip anybody off. And if I did, where are the complaints from the poor people that got ripped off? There was only a policewoman. And all she could say, by the time the trial came, that she did predict that my daughter goes to Florida, that my mom can go with her, and that I was in a job that had bondage in it. And at that point, she was
Uh-huh.
And she didn't know anything more about me, but she could be helpful. So she was turned, but that was worse because now I am a witch from a policewoman point of view. How are they going to make me illegitimate? So at the end, I was found guilty, and because of that, we could appeal. And as we prepared for the trial, this had to be decided. Marge Buckley said there are two outcomes. You're either guilty or they find you not guilty. If you find you guilty, we can change the law. If they find you not guilty, you pay a fine and go home and nothing changed. I said, let's change the law. Let's rip this law.
Yeah.
It took us 9 years. 9 years, Vajra. 9 years of every time we had a new influx of some lesbian, newly minted lawyers. They kind of cut their teeth on this case. And there were many. I left town because I was so disgusted with LA. I said, enough is enough. And the air got very bad, which was the real reason I sold my house and left. And then 9 years went by, and I was gardening in the backyard, and somebody sent me through the mail a newspaper clipping. The witch won, and then they reported it how Rose Bird, who was on the Supreme Court of California, struck down that law and trashed it.
All right.
So I defeated the law. Imagine if I stayed there, and would that be the only thing I could do? It was a miserable long time. It would have been. I just went. If you want this goddess, you handle it. I go north. I must have air. I cannot breathe here. And it was better in the Bay Area.
I thank you. Yeah, in San Francisco Bay, yeah. I thank you for that. I thank you for pioneering that. And I think it's important for people today, especially women, to understand the kind of fighting that had to happen, the kind of perseverance, the kind of courage to stand up against, what was in the culture at large. And that's just one example.
I think that's the Neanderthal in me. The Neanderthal won't let go.
Yeah.
But I don't.
But there's one thing. See, there's one. there's one thing I want some clarity on. I didn't understand about there were several Chinese women that didn't speak English. What part did they have in the early part of this trial?
They were the jury. The jury.
Oh, the jury. Oh, my goodness.
Yes, this was the jury. All Chinese ladies. First, I was happy. Oh, they all ladies, I said. And then I looked and I said, but do they speak English? And they said, not one of them. That's how they were selected. Not one could speak English.
So the jury was stacked against you, because that is not a jury of peers. Your peers need to be able to speak English. Yeah, right. Okay.
And then the word poisoner wasn't helpful.
Exactly.
But had they found me innocent, I could not have changed the law, because
changed the law. So there you go.
So when I was found guilty, it was depressing, but I knew I'm gonna just crush this law, because it was like, it was like what, 18th century law or something. When were the 49ers around there digging for gold, whenever that was, long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's more than 100 years ago.
Yeah. I just think that it's your story today, the part of your story that you've told today, and also from your biography, way back into Hungary and the revolt, and as you told about the revolution, how that prepared you for as starting a revolution of women's spirituality here in the United States. I think it paints a beautiful picture. And also your counsel to people to find out their heritage, their bloodline heritage, and connect into that. That paints a picture
how you find
of how
out who you are.
Yeah, it paints a picture of how the Divine Mother, the Great Goddess, prepares each of us for our work in the world. That all the preparation that we need, all the foundation that we need to do whatever our particular work is for humanity. And for bettering the world is right there, and your story really reveals that so beautifully.
And without studying and researching, there is no knowledge. When there is no knowledge, there is no power. So get that in your head, little girl. Nobody's going to come around and spoon it in your mouth, because it's still knowledge that has to be found, has to be personalized, has to be internalized. And you can do that. You can do that. But you got to get over not reading anything. A lot of good books are online. A lot of good books are for free. You have to educate yourself, but start with your own roots, and you grow from there. Sometimes it grows into folk art. You would start creating folk art or folk song. I have written this one thing that became a global hit. We all come from the goddess.
We all come from the goddess, and to her we shall return like a drop of rain, flowing to the ocean. Yeah, beautiful. It is a absolute staple of goddess. It is such an encapsulation.
I feel very lucky that I managed to receive this, because I just had the first two lines, but we were outdoors. It was a full moon, and with full moon, it started sort of drizzling a little bit, but not too much. And I asked the goddess, please hold the rain so we can have be short, don't worry, just hold the rain. And then I get my women in the cars, you can come down as hard as you want. And with that rapport, we were standing there, about 5, 6 of us, right on the beach. I mean, I could see the water making little rivulets and go into the ocean. And I just had, we all come from the goddess, and to her we shall return. And I said, oh my God, I'm blank. I need 2 more lines. Then I looked down and I said, wait a minute. Like a drop of rain flowing into the ocean. And that was it. It was given to me. It really was. And then I used it because back then we had nothing. There was no song. There was no nothing. We had read some books, but it was the shelves were bare. Versus now, you go into a bookstore and you have goddess sections and feminist sections and all over the place. In other words, the goddess books are almost more now than the non-goddess books. And all the artists started entering this realm of imagination. Lots of women wrote interesting narratives. My best friend for a long time, Diana Paxson, with the Mists of Avalon, she was helping Marian Bradley.
Marian Zimmer Bradley, yeah.
Yes, she was her right hand. And Marian was a Episcopalian, not a witch. And so anytime there was witchy stuff and a ritual, that's all Diana Paxson. But she's very low-key about it. She always considered Marian being her mentor. And she inherited the Avalon kind of materials, and she sprung quite a few post-Avalon, post-Mist books about Avalon and the priestesses. Oh, that woman can write. She was my magical editor. I always went to her and said, please, take your silver tongue and lick at this script, if you would. Just lick it a little bit. Make it
None of us do it alone, do we, Z? We need help from each other. We support each other. We all have our gifts.
And you know, that's where we need a tribe. And the tribe can be many. Like Beethoven had daughters. He had daughters. They minded his script. They minded. Lots of times the daughters of goddess worshipping or advanced consciousness men finish the job for them, and that's also good. That's also good. 5 daughters ought to do something with literature.
So, in terms of women educating themselves, I'm going to close the door here. My dogs are barking. In terms of women educating themselves, I want to point them to you and your the Holy Book of Women's Mysteries and about 12 other books you've written.
Yeah.
And how can they get in touch with you? What's your link online?
Okay. You can write to me at zbudapest@gmail.com. I do look at my Gmail, and I do answer. You can come to my website, zbudapest.com. That shows you all the things that are going on. Right now, for example, we are here in May. We have Women's Berry Festival here at my house on the 22nd of June for midsummer gatherings. And this is when we gather as many people together as possible because it's the height of the year. And we take pies and we bless the pies. We feed each other the pies. We take it home. They leave some for me. I live on it for a week. I live in Watson, where we provide the country with raspberries, strawberries from here. We are the berry capital of California, and it's a tradition here of the Mexican women who work the fields here to have a berry festival for women only. They actually have it here. So I thought that once I have a second one, I would invite Elvira, who is the high priestess of the Mexican group, to come. She doesn't speak good English, which is, but pies are speaking for themselves. Pie is good. It is no problem. So Elvira could experience the white women doing it, and then she may invite her friends over. Maybe it would be accepted by the Mexican women, and they would start involving us in their berry festival. And Elvira knows me. Did you know that the goddess actually appeared here in Watsonville in an oak tree? And there is still today, there is a shrine there with candles burning, and the Lady of Guadalupe pictures on the candles and in big ones. And there is a veneration of the goddess here within a few miles from my house. That is done by the Mexicans. And every time I show up, you know, I'm doing the same as they do, and I pray, and they give me space for it. Elvira knows that we have goddesses appear in Europe too. I told her that our goddesses are a little more pale, but it's the same goddess. And,
she comes in all colors, all colors.
All colors, and she wears blue without the stars. See, that Lady Guadalupe never shows up without her starry cape. That's always stars. Ours has only stars underneath, but sometimes around her head. Her halo is all stars, so there they are. But our goddess is always a little sad, looking down, and with child or no child, as it may be, the Queen of Heaven of Europe is not very happy. But the Mexican goddess looks right into your face, right into your face, you know. I'm the queen of all Americas, both north and south. She said that. And
well, it's time to get the European goddess's eyes lifted up, and
put a
proud
smile
as the
on
Mexican
that girl.
goddess.
Yeah, that's right. Put a smile on that Blessed Virgin.
Yeah.
And
now we're talking about how women can get in touch with you, and so zbudapest.com and zbudapest@gmail.com, and of course this is going to be in text next to the interviews that are going to be on this interviews will be online, so they don't have to write it down. They'll be able to find it there. But I really want to point women.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vajra. Thank you for doing this.
And I want to thank you for your decades of work and your work that is continuing, and really point women to you because you're carrying the witch knowledge, the woman knowledge, and you're just overflowing with it. And I really appreciate that, and everything, all the books you've written and the work you continue to do. So
I love you too, Vajra. And let's not forget it. I have a biannual festival in the woods. That's one of my biggest things that I do every other year, and this is a year when we are doing it in the redwoods near the coastline. We have a perfect place because of Native Americans created a bowl deep into the dirt, 15 feet down, so it is totally created with the 4 entrances from the 4 directions, and then a special place for fire, which is unheard of in California. Nobody's allowed fire. But this is so deep in the dirt that there's no way it can climb out. You know, it's 15 feet down. There's no way that a fire can be, jump that much. And that happens this year, September 6th till the 9th, and the tickets are already on sale. We have 150 places, and we live in cabins, regular cabins. We have hot water, we have heat, we have air conditioning, but the beds are not too comfortable because they were made for children, so I'm providing blow-up mattresses to throw on top, so it's much better. And we have them, blow-up mattresses. People can either bring their own and we blow it up for them, or just take one from us.
Yeah, it's so important to gather like this with someone who can lead women in expertly like you do in ritual and in teachings. And I've been to your goddess festivals years ago. I've been twice, and I want to tell women to go, because to gather together with a spiritual guide like Z, and to be in nature, which is what you're providing for the women, all of that is really important. It can be life-changing. Yeah.
We have all kinds of birds and a lot of owls, and the wind in the trees, and these redwoods don't exist anywhere else on Earth but here, and they are millions of years old. I mean, these trees are really, really ancient, yet they don't show it. They look gorgeous, and they're very tall. There's a lot of magic from the trees, just hanging out with the trees. and inhaling that fresh air. Very, very good. And in a one good weekend, you can turn your soul around from fear into jubilation and a kind of uncertainty into certainty. And these are the foundations that you can build the rest.
Absolutely. Beautifully said. All right, everyone, get in touch with Z Budapest, foremother of women's spirituality, going strong today. Thank you
Blessed
so much,
be.
Z. Blessed
Thank you, Vajra. Blessed be. Bye.
My pleasure. Blessed be. Okay, we're back, Z.